So basically, like Palumi said, we will be talking about making traceable impact with influencer marketing. Just simply put, it's basically how can you achieve ROI with influencer marketing? As we know, um, with all things marketing, nothing should be done in silos. However, there are times where you want to just leverage a particular platform in its entirety for a campaign, and your strategy is around one particular platform. And there are times when there needs to be it needs to be 360, and there needs to be a full integration. So what we're going to look at is, first of all, what's the objective for influencer marketing? How do you select your influencers? How do you plan your influencer campaign, either on its own in isolation or integrated with your other activities? And then how do you measure, which essentially is where your ROI bit comes to play a whole lot. Now, just before we go into the session fully, first I'd like to ask a question. In the chat box, please drop your favorite influencer marketing campaign. Now, I have put two boxes here. Drop your favorite campaign as a marketer, because I know a number of people here are into either digital marketing or marketing in general, and then as a consumer, meaning one that actually did influence you to purchase or consider purchase. So please, can you just drop that in the box? I'll give 2 minutes before I continue. Whatever campaign that you've really loved, either as a standalone or integrated, you really love the influencer campaign bit of it, as a marketer or as a consumer. So you can just drop your responses in the chat box, and we will look through it um, once you drop. Okay, is it that nobody likes any campaign? I'm not seeing anything in the chat box. I've not seen anything in the chat box. Okay. Can you still hear me? Calling me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. All right. Okay, so we'll just go ahead to the next slide, which is, what is influencer marketing? So basically, there, of course, as you know, there are different definitions to these things, but my simple definition would be allowing an influencer to drive authentic conversations and engagement around a brand and its products or services. Key things here is drive authentic conversations and engagement. It has to be authentic for it to be deemed influencer marketing. Now, who then is an influencer? Because we refer to an influencer in our definition. Now, an influencer is either an individual or an organization. Organization meaning a platform. So, for example, DigiClan. For example, She Leads Africa. Cracks TV. They're not individuals. They are organizations or platforms, but they wield some sort of influence. So individuals or organizations who have the power to impact a specific audience, because I mean, while the growth of influencer marketing in Nigeria, for example, started with, um, just people who are into funny content, very generic content. We now, it has grown now to, people with really um, niche what do you call it, content, and thereby niche audience. For example, Tosi Olasende of Money Africa is into finance. That's quite niche. You have influencers are really into skincare, you like Dima Ome, who also does lifestyle. So now you have um, people who have specific audience um, and specific content. So with They have the power to impact a specific audience with purchase decisions, awareness, or interest to a particular topic, product, or service based on their end knowledge or reputation. End knowledge or reputation because it might not necessarily be someone who has studied skincare in school or studied finance in school. They've earned the knowledge over time, or they have a reputation for being knowledgeable in these things. So basically, an influencer has to have a specific audience. They have to be able to wield power to influence purchase decisions over a particular topic, product, or service, yeah, which they are knowledgeable about. Now, if we talk about making traceable impact with influencer marketing, it starts with the objective. Because if you say you want to make an impact, you want to make ROI, your objective will determine what you measure at the end of the day. Your objective will determine what you classify as ROI. Let's also not forget that ROI means different things to different people, and this is one thing people often forget. We sometimes we just say when we hear ROI, we immediately equate it to money, naira and kobo. Sometimes for some people, ROI not is not necessarily naira and kobo. For example, if a brand is having a PR crisis, for example, and they not necessarily PR crisis, but they've been seen in a particular light, and they want to use influencers to change the way they have been seen, right? ROI for them is not necessarily money. ROI for them is seeing the negative mentions turn to positive mentions, and the increased number of positive mentions over a stipulated period. So the objective is very important. So it's important to start with the objective, because once you are clear on this, you will be able to narrow down the pool of influencers you want to work with significantly. That's the stating the objective is also a first step to um, narrowing down on your influencers. There's certain influencers you will use for conversions. There's certain influencers you use to drive awareness. So once you state what your objective is and what ROI means to you, it's the first step in determining the kind of influencers to use. Now, when we go into different types of objectives that you can have for influencer marketing, first it can be awareness. So basically, you're just looking uh, for people with broad reach, people who are well known. Sometimes here you use your what do you call it, your celebrities, right? You use the celebrities because you just it's just all about the reach for you. They don't necessarily have great engagement, but they you know that they have so number of followers, and then they will be able to drive your brand message or create awareness for whatever you want them to push. Then the next level or to your objective is engagement, right? Now, this influencer may have smaller reach, but you know that they drive engagement. You know that when you look at their comment section, for example, the amount of comments that they get whenever they do posts, the ratio of comments to their followers is quite significant. It's somewhere in the 10% and upward. By the way, if you see someone that has 2% engagement or 2% comment versus their followers, uh, 2% of their followers commenting, it's actually really high when you take the algorithm of these platforms into consideration. A lot of my explanations, examples will be majorly around Instagram, because um, Instagram, YouTube are two platforms that are high in influencer marketing, and then you also have TikTok. So engagement, if engagement is the objective, you may not find someone with 2 million followers or 1 million followers. It might be somewhere 200, 100K, but you know that they have really good engagement. And then the objective may be conversion. So basically, you are looking at uh, someone who has a track record for driving traffic. When they say link in bio, you know that people are rushing to that link to click, or when they say use this code, people are going to uh, uh, jump on it, right? So it's basically people who you know, and sometimes you may not know. You'll have to either do research or you test and learn. Sometimes, or except you're able to ask people, oh, when you use this person, what was the um, result you got? What were you tracking? What were you trying to drive? Sometimes, as a brand, you just have to test and learn, especially if you are going into new territories. For example, if you have always been doing awareness campaigns with influencers and then you want to go into conversions, you haven't done it before, sometimes you just have to test and learn, right? But you also have to do your background work and check with these influencers using tools, asking people, just doing your checks. And then another objective, which is not common but it's also important, is ambassadorship. Here, basically, you are looking for someone who can create content for your own channel, or someone who you want to drive association with. You want to leverage on their, what do you call it? You're not just leveraging on their engagement or awareness. You want to leverage who they are. You want to leverage their own brand equity um, as well for your brand, right? So it's using them so that people can see, oh, okay, it's this person. If it's this person they're using, then it would be meaningful, or it will be great. Or if the person using, just ideally leveraging the person's image or using the person to create content for your own platforms. So for the purpose of this session, we would focus on conversions. So if we can move to the next slide, and basically just people who drive traffic, who are able to drive traffic. So we'll really focus on conversion. And again, conversion in this case is not just sales, it's also app downloads, it's also people filling out a form for like a newsletter or to get some content. it, Conversions can mean different things to different people, so also including sales. Now, conversion starts with your selection process. How do you select your influencers in the first place? Because if you know that the um, what you're trying to achieve is for people to what download an app, or for people to buy a particular product, right? That has to come to bear when you are selecting the kind of influencers you want to use. So first step is brand fit. Yep. You are looking for influencers that fit your brand persona, that have shared values with your brand. Um, while, you know, if we say, for example, in Nigeria, sometimes it may be a bit difficult to find someone that has shared values with your brand or really fits your brand persona. As with all things, there will always be a deal breaker, right? Um, for example, you cannot say you are a family brand, for example, like you want to use Jaruma. It's not possible. It's way off, right? So you have to essentially find, there has to be some core values of your brand that you want the influencer to embody, or you want or you say that this is who my brand is, and I'm looking for someone who matches out of this 10 criteria of brand persona. I'm looking for someone who at least matches what, five, or who matches these three because they are deal breakers for the brand, right? So create a checklist of your brand values or persona and use that checklist to recruit. Um, Other things you can check is for previous collaborations. Have you collaborated with these people before? How was your experience when you collaborated with them? Have they mentioned your brand before? In what context? What did they say? Um, I remember there was a particular person we wanted to use for a campaign, and by the time we went through his timeline, we saw that he dropped some negative comments around the brand, and so we didn't use that person again. right? Because and we didn't make sense for you to come and say, oh, by the way, this product is trash, and then you also then come back and say, no, actually it is good, right? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't sound believable. So have they talked about your brand? Has it been in the positive or negative light? Do these people have existing controversies that you think you do not want to drag your brand into? Because if you possibly engage such an influencer, you know Nigeria Twitter, you know how we are. We don't waste time to drag people. So these are other things that you need to check for, aside from the brand fit. Now, you need to take advantage of tools to do your research. Two tools I know you can use are Meltwater and Influencer DB, which influencer database. I'm sure there are other tools. If you know other tools that you can use for checking influencer pages, please drop in the chat box. The two tools I know are Influencer DB and Meltwater. I will just drop that here in the chat box. Someone is not on mute. Palumi, can you please mute the person? I'm hearing a feedback or echo. Okay, thank you. So make sure you, as much as possible, get some tools that you can use to check their posts, their mentions, basically to understand the content they're posting, the accounts that are attached to the accounts, like accounts they mention frequently and all of that, accounts they associate themselves with, all of those things. As much as possible, you should check. Now, if you go to the next slide, I've put a sample screenshot from Influencer DB, which is a tool I personally use. Now, Influencer DB basically gives you a couple of information about when you're doing in your research phase. It has a lot of other functionalities, right? But it allows you to understand like the age split of this influencer, allows you to understand the gender split. So for example, if I'm doing a campaign targeting men, and this is important because um, you see certain people. Let me see who, for example, let me use Mawuli Gavo, for example, who is an actor, right? He's Ghanaian, but he's very much in Nollywood. For someone like that, it's easy to say, oh, let me use him to push a men product. But then if you check his back end and stats, you may end up realizing that he has more women following him than men, and thereby your, what do you call it, it's a waste, right? Now, so I've used an example here where we see that this particular person has more female followers, 66% female followers, and you have what, about 80 something percent of her followers from Nigeria, right? And then you have little bits in other, and then you also see that on an average, the estimated reach per post is 92,000 people. You also see that the quality of her audience, the quality of the audience, meaning that the people that follow her, are they active? Do they engage with her content as well as with content with other platforms that they follow, or are they just stalkers? Are they bots? And this ends up giving you like a quality of the person's audience. So 89% is like really huge. It means that the person has really good engagement, their followers really engage, and they have like little to no bots. Yeah, and I'll also show you like the other end of the spectrum if you go to the next slide. So on the next slide, you see two screenshots. You see one that has 48%, you see one that has 95%. Also, by the way, for people who always wonder why is Maraji expensive, she has 95% quality grade of audience. That is that's top notch. So that means that whatever you post, you're expecting an estimated 285,000 at least reach from your post, right? And you know that she has an audience that engages. And we'll also um, go into the collaborations and the kind of content, right? Because it's not just about the fact that this person's audience engages. You have to ensure that the content you want them to post for you is something that will be of interest to her audience or his audience, or it's in a format or in a way that the audience is used to, you know. So and I mean, it's also for the person engaging the influencer to go through the influencer's content and see what are the types of contents that have gotten really huge engagement. For example, for with Taoma, for example, when I go through her videos and see what videos, I think she just hit 1 million followers. I look at what videos get up to 500,000 views, which is half of her following. By the way, that's really huge. And when you see those type of contents, right, you can see sort of a pattern which will inform you as a brand or agency on how to create content with or for this influencer. um, Now, when it comes to the content type, this is a very important thing. Nobody knows the interests of their followers better than the influencers themselves. You do not know it. You can look through the content and you can make your extrapolations and all of that, but the influencers ultimately know what their what do you call it, know what their audience wants. So give them that space to produce the content that their community wants to see. Of course, we know that there has to be a balance between, the brand and what and and the influencer. There has to be that balance, but there also it also has to be a smart way of collaborate. There has to be a smart way of collaborating. There has to be a middle ground where the influencer's opinion is considered because they know their audience best, and then what you want to achieve as a brand is also being considered. Yeah. So when you go into planning this collaboration properly. Now there's a couple of things that you need to consider when you are planning. We've talked about like um, the objectives. Now then you also need to sort of create like um, a concept. What's the concept of um, how you want to go about this campaign. Then you go into selecting the influencers, which we have talked about. You go into contracts. You brief the influencers. If there's any production to be done, or you give the influencers time to create the content, and then you go live. But it's always important that when you are setting up contracts, if conversions is the key thing for you, ensure that in the contract you mention this. Ensure that in negotiating or conversing with these influencers, you mention that conversions is the objective for you. This and this is the conversion you're looking at. If possible, write the KPIs into that contract. Recently, I was having a conversation with an influencer and their manager, and the manager said to me, "You know what? In the contract, let's align on the KPIs that you want to achieve with this influencer campaign. Put it into the contract we both sign, and this will be the premise for us as a brand to engage this influencer next year." So they are guaranteeing us that if we agree on the KPIs and we meet these KPIs, next year you on your end will engage us for another campaign, probably for a full year. I mean, as a brand, if the influencer is stepping up to the plate to beat their chest and say, "You want ROI? I will deliver ROI, but this is what I get in return," you will be a lot more interested in having that conversation, right? Because you know that whatever they will do their best to achieve the ROI, the KPIs that has been set for them. And if it's, ROI, if it's a sales or some sort of conversions, in this case, you know that your objective will be met. So whatever money you are putting into this person, um, you already know that you will get you will get it back. Now, so when it comes to collaborations, how you want to collaborate is a major question that affects ROI. Now, like I've mentioned before, ROI is different things to different people. So you ask yourself, how do you want to collaborate with the influencer? Do you want to co-create? And co-creation is similar to what we talked about under the ambassadorship, what do you call it? Objective. Now, co-creation is basically taking the influencer, go in studio, create content with them, and then use that content on your own page as well as on the influencer's page. I don't know if anyone saw the Nivea, there was the Nivea lip care campaign, which was done with certain influencers who created their own content, but there was a particular influencer which was taken in studio and content was created with that influencer and posted on the brand page, right? So that's co-creation, meaning that you are creating with the influencer. Then there's also brand content. Personally, this is the last thing I'll ever want to do with any influencer. And I'll also explain how I balance brand content with influencer content. Now, brand content is basically giving the influencer your visual as a brand to post. Just give them your flyer or your content or whatever it is, and then they post it. You are not interested in whether, sometimes, most people in this case do not consider whether it is a fit for the platform or not. They just go ahead and tell the influencer, this is what we want to post. Just go ahead and um, post it, right? Now you also have the third way of collaboration, which is influencer content, which is basically telling the influencer, this is what we want to achieve, please create content for this. And so here, how you collaborate, um, you know you have to tell the influencer that this is the objective. I want um, so number of people, 15 people, to click on a link or to download an app, right? You need to let the influencer know, because the content they are creating needs to um, drive that action. If it's co-creation, when you are doing the concept, when you are doing your scripts, your mood boards, whatever it is you are going to do with that influencer, the objective, the conversion that you want to achieve has to be factored into that, what do you call it, has to be factored into that content you are creating with the influencer. If we look at this recent example that has been going around, the Kidwire, what do you call it, ad that he did for Eco Hotel, for example. I look at that video and I imagine that Eco Hotel has been shut for a long time. Now they're opening back up. The idea is they want to show you all of the measures they are putting in place to ensure your safety when you are coming back. And this is to speak to the kind of people who visit that place, who know that their health is priority, right? They want to show you that we mop this place every 2 seconds. We wipe down every 3 seconds. You go through this process and go through that process, and it's all for your safety, right? And they've leveraged the influencer Kidwire in that content, and it's really apt because he's been in lockdown, in quotes, for so number of months, and he's just coming out, which is similar to the situation of the hotel being in lockdown and everybody being in lockdown, and now we are all just opening ourselves back up to interactions, right? So of course they have started from a point of what is the objective here. And I hear that I think the entire process of shooting that ad was done in what, about, I think, 48 hours or so. So what is the objective is where you want to start from, and that needs to be very much factored into. So if your objective is sales, for example, you cannot just uh you cannot just tell the influencer, you know what, just create an ad for me that talks about my brand, and that's all the brief you give to the influencer. No, you have to be very clear that, you know what, I want to be able to drive traffic to my website, and you need your content, whatever content you're creating needs to drive that traffic to my website. Now, when it comes to um, making that traceable impact, because you want to be able to trace the fact that what this influencer has done did actually drive sales, or did actually drive some sort of conversion, did drive downloads, there has to be a link. There has to be a link between the influencer content and measurement. And oh, sorry, there has to be a link between the influencer content and attribution. There has to be a way that you can attribute what results has been gotten to that particular influencer. So a couple of ways. First off is to give the influencer a trackable link to put in their bio or in their content. For example, maybe somewhere in the middle of the influencer's video, or in their post, they put a website, visit this website, or visit this link, for example, and it's a trackable link, that you know that anyone who must have come from this link must have come from that influencer's page. Now, I mentioned that I was going to speak to how to balance brand content with influencer content. And I mean, in the recent Beauty Month campaign done by Nivea, if you go and check out maybe Beverly Naya's page, for example, what we did is, the first page is the influencer's content. Thank God for carousels. The first image you see is the influencer's content, and if you swipe right behind that, you are going to see the brand content. You will see the brand visual, or the brand KV, and so that's how we balanced it, right? So in the caption drives you to swipe left to see what is next to it, but you are already not put off by just seeing a brand visual. It's the visual of the influencer that you are following, that you are here to see, that you see first, and then when you swipe, you then see the brand visual. So that way there is a balance created. And so if you create a trackable link and give to the influencer to put in their bio, or to weave into their content, their image, or whatever it is, you are able to know that, okay, when I check my back end, 20,000 people clicked on this particular link. It could only have been people who saw the influencer content. That way you can trace the impact. Another way is to say, for example, you partner with uh, Jumia or Konga or whatever e-com platform, drinks.ng, for example, if I'm a Guinness, and you tell the influencer, I'm giving you this code, for example, the code is Kidwaya Guinness, or Smooth Kidwaya, for example, for Guinness Smooth, or Smooth Beverly. And anyone who goes to Drinks NG to buy any of the Guinness variety, or maybe even you open it up to any of the Diageo variety and use this code Smooth Beverly, they get maybe 1,000 naira off their purchase. You can also, for ROI reasons, you can say you only get this 1,000 naira off when you buy when you buy 5,000 worth of products, or 4,000 worth of products. There has to be a balance for profitability as a business, because you're not, I mean, we're not here to throw money away, right? So and so by the time drinks.ng shares a report with you, they say, okay, 10,000 people use this code, this Beverly's code, 15,000 people use Kidwaya's code, now 50,000 people use Mike's code, right? And so you can tell that I paid this person this amount, but 50,000 people use their code, and you can actually calculate the return on ad spend from that. You can actually say, okay, this particular influencer works well for me. I would use this person, more of this person. Of course, you have to look at that vis-a-vis their following, their engagement, all of that, which you should have done before engaging the influencer in the first place, right? So these are some ways by which you can actually make traceable impact. When next, the boss asks you, okay, you want to do influencer marketing, how are we sure that this is actually making some returns for us? Sit down and have a conversation. What exactly is returns for us? When you align on what returns are, then you can go through this process that we have been looking at, the selection process, the content creation process, because those inform how you eventually measure what you would measure, how you will create the content to ensure that it's in line with your objective. Now, other things to consider is the content platform and the format. What platform do you want to use? Do you want to use YouTube? Do you want to use TikTok? Do you want to use Instagram? What platform do you want to use for your influencer marketing? And then what's the content format? Is it a video? Is it IGTV? Is it, excuse me, is just an image? Is it just a tweet? All of these you need to factor in your planning phase. Your content meets objectives. Like I've mentioned before, if the essence if the objective is to drive engagement, the way the content is created, the way your caption is couched, should drive engagement. For example, if you look at some of the Maraji videos, for example, she creates a content to say different types of you, and so for example, the the objective is engagement, for example, and you say, and the content is around different types of people when they're using deodorants, for example, and then the caption says, or the end of the video and the caption says, which one are you? That way, that that has been created to actually drive engagement, versus if it's just awareness, where in the content she's just talking about, oh, these are the functions and the benefits of this phone, and these are the functions and benefits of this, what do you call it, of this TV. So let's use a phone, for example. I'm Oppo. I want to use Maraji. I would. So let's talk about, if it's for awareness, I'm talking about, by the way, these are the functions of this phone. It does this, it does that, and she weaves that into her content and says, you can go into any slot to buy this. You can get this phone in any slot, for example. Now, if it's awareness, that is how we'll put it. Now, if it was conversions where you want her to drive traffic for people to go and buy, you are going to, in her content, she will speak to the fact that, oh, if you go to Jumia now, there is a 20% off on this phone, or if you click on the link in bio, you can actually directly buy this phone, or if you use this code, Oppo Maraji, you are going to get 20% off when you buy this phone. That way, you can actually measure the sales impact of the content that Maraji has created. But if you leave it open, if you are not clear on the objectives, you are not clear on what you want to achieve, then the kind of content created will not be clear as well. And you also need to ensure that this is factored in at the point of briefing the influencer. Now, then we also have roles and responsibilities in the point of planning, and which speaks to, what are you doing as a brand? How are you going to enable the influencer? Are you able to give them products to do giveaways, for example? And this is essentially when you're working with an influencer over a long period of time. How are you going to help them such that they can refresh the content? How are you going to empower them? Another thing that brands often forget to do sometimes is, you have given an influencer, you have paid an influencer to create content. Make sure that your brand handle is right there in the comment section of that influencer, interacting with them. Even if the content was created for awareness, you have people asking questions. Oh, where can I buy this? make sure that the brand handle is there responding to such questions, or they want more clarifications. Make sure you are there responding, telling people, oh, this is how you can use it, this is where you can buy it, this is how much it goes for. Don't just tell them post and that's it, and the end, you walk away from that, right? You have to ensure that you are there constantly monitoring what is going on. So how do you empower the influencers to achieve the KPIs that you want to achieve? What are you going to do? What are the influencers going to do? It needs to be very clear. Now, if we go into then measurement, because if you say your objective is ROI, how exactly are you going to measure the ROI? And again, like I said, it depends on the objective. So here are just a couple of um, things to KPIs to measure vis-a-vis the objectives you may want to work with. I cannot overemphasize the fact that when people say ROI, it doesn't necessarily mean money. ROI can mean any of these things you see on your screen at the moment, right? It can be any of these. So first, if it's awareness, for example, um, you can be measuring for reach, you can be measuring for impressions, you can be measuring for search behavior. Now, another thing you also need conversation you need to have with your influencer is um, the fact that you would need reports, right? Um, it's something that you should let them know ahead. Some influencers will tell you, "Oh, I can't share my back end." No, you have to share your back end because I need to measure, right? It's just basically making them comfortable and just knowing that you are not intruding in their business. This is just what you need, right? So if awareness is your objective, here are some things you can measure: reach, impressions, and search behavior. Search behavior means that has the number of searches for what that influencer is pushing gone up in since they posted the content, right? So you check how many more people are searching for that product that the influencer is pushing or the influencers are pushing, right? So you have to have a before. What was the volume of search before the campaign started? And then what then now is the volume of search after the campaign has started. So that's what we mean by search behavior. Then if your objective is engagement, for example, you need to look at things like comments, likes, shares, views, clicks, sentiments. The example I gave before, if your objective is for you to change the perception that of your brand for whatever reason from negative to positive, then um, sentiments need to be measured. How many negative mentions did you have before? How many how has that reduced? And then now positive mentions. How many more positive mentions do you have at the moment? You need to check out this. You need to measure these things, and it all boils down from your objective. Now, depending on the platform that you have used or you've engaged your influencers on, it will also determine what you're measuring as engagement. And then you also have conversions. If conversions is your KPI, depending on what conversion is to you, it can be downloads, it can be clicks, which is essentially maybe traffic to your website or to a particular website. It can be sales, and it there's also the fact that you may just be measuring how much of traffic is this person sending to this website versus how many people who came from this link actually bought. So those are two separate things. You can just be measuring traffic, and you can actually be measuring sales. In true collaboration fashion or style, make these things known to the influencers. Let them be clear on what you want to achieve. If you are partnering with them, you are both putting your reputations on the line, the brand reputation and the influencer reputation. So be clear to them what exactly it is you want to achieve. Some people might tell you upfront, you know what, I'm sorry, I cannot guarantee traffic, or I cannot guarantee sales, or I cannot guarantee downloads or code redemptions. They will tell you upfront. So you either walk away or you change the objective and the KPI you are measuring. And then if, for example, your objective is ambassadorship, For example, you're looking like at things like mentions and associations. People will tell you these days that every time they see Beverly Naya, they see Nivea, because the brand has used her over and over and over again. So look for associations. I remember there was a campaign that was done last year October, um, for one of the deal products for Nivea, black and white, whereby um, what's this guy's name? Maya Tafo was used for the campaign, and basically it was a fashion related competition whereby you wanted people who are into fashion designing to enter a competition for a chance to be mentored by Mai and to win certain amount of money. Now, if for example I decide to use Kabiru the tailor as the person that they will mentor with, I'm sure not many people will enter for that, but you're also leveraging the influence that Maya Tafo has in that space. And so you want to see how many people will actually enter this competition simply because it says Maya Tafo will mentor you. So you're looking at things like uh, um, mentioned. So, for example, if we said to Maya Tafo that we're using you because we want to leverage your influence in the fashion space and we're looking for at least 500 entries for this competition. And so that way he's clear that this is the way we want to use him, and he's also clear on what you want to achieve, right? So these are the different objectives we looked at earlier, and these are some of the different what do you call it, different KPIs you can measure under the different objectives. So make sure that the influencers know what you want them to achieve. Make sure that they are, if possible, the KPIs are in the contract, or the KPIs are discussed before contracts are eventually signed um, between both parts. Now, just to mention, sometimes when we are doing engagement, when we are measuring comments, some people just go and say, "Oh, this post got 100 comments. That's really great, right?" But then by the time you sift through the comments, you find out that 90 of that 100 is people just saying, "Yes, queen, we love it. Step on us. We are your carpet. Roll us. We are your roll on." That has nothing to do with your campaign. So essentially, if you say we got 100, we didn't get 100 comments. The influencer got 90 and you got 10. So when you're measuring comments, you need to be very clear. If you want to be true to yourself and your brand, you need to be very clear that, okay, this actually were the brand related comments, and that is what you actually want to measure. So we can say that generally everyone who commented saw it. So yes, reach, impressions, likes possibly, but when it comes to comments, things like comments, then you want to actually qualify the comments. Even when it comes to views, you want to see how many people watched up to 70% of this video. Not just, you don't just say, okay, yes, everything is views. When people watch up to 3 seconds, it's calculated as a view. Maybe in that 3 seconds is only the brand logo that has shown, or it's only the influencer walking across the room that has shown. It's not calculated as a view. So you also need to qualify some of these KPIs to ensure that they are actually of value to you as a brand, and you're not just looking at things on face value. Yep. So I think that's it from me. Now I will take your questions.
Okay, thank you, Tayo. Any questions? You can drop your comment, your questions in the chat box. You can also, if you want to talk, just mention it so that you can unmute and then quickly ask and type and respond.
Good morning,
Hi.
Omoche and Balumi. Thank you for the session and thank you for the insight. So I have a very quick question, please.
Okay.
So I'd like to ask Omokende if she thinks that every type of brand should use influencers. I sort of feel that there are some categories that that influencer marketing is tailored, is more appropriate to, and there are others that should not. Well, I'd like to get her perspective. What categories do you recommend influencer marketing to, and what brands should just essentially face their fronts and not use influencers?
Okay, hi Timmy, good morning. I actually didn't take this class. I'm sure you are directing your questions to Tayo instead. So I'll let Tayo answer that question. Thank you very much.
Hi, Timmy. So I honestly will not say that there is I can't say right now that there's a particular industry or there's a particular, what do you call it, category that influencer marketing will not work for. It only depends on who you categorize as an influencer, right? Um, I mean, if for influencers, let's not just look at influencers as, what we know it to be today, the people who we follow today, right? For example, the vice president is an influencer. If he says, for example, um, he comes and says, venture garden group is doing a great work in nurturing businesses, for startups and all of that. Or he says, for example, CC Hub is doing a fantastic job for startups, and this and that. That is influencing, right? So will you say, okay, CC Hub as a brand should not engage in influencer marketing? No, it depends on who can influence people when it comes to matters as regards CC Hub, depending on who their target audience is. So I won't essentially say there is a uh, business category that doesn't require influencer marketing. It ultimately depends on who the audience is and what kind of influencing you require and who you see as influencer marketing. So essentially, it will be taken on a case by case basis. If you can mention maybe one brand and then we can take it as a case and I'll give an example. But generally, I would not say that there is, you just need to put some more thoughts to it. It will be easier for some brands to do influencer marketing versus other brands. I hope I answered your question.
Okay. So Damilola Festus Ayoride is asking that he needs ideas on how to leverage influencers for app downloads for a fintech.
Fintech, so there's financials. First off, if you go through like some of the processes we've discussed, you will narrow down on the kind of influencers you can use in fintech. I mentioned Tosin Olasende of Money Africa, for example, who is a lot about financial inclusion, financial education, for example. If you tell Tosin, and I know she has a community just beyond Instagram, or she actually has like a community of people she sends newsletters to and things like that. If you look at someone like Ifeduro Simieti of AGS Tribe, right, and you want to leverage AGS Tribe, sorry, as a platform, who sends out, or even She Leads Africa, they send out newsletters. For example, you collaborate with them in their newsletters, they do a write-up about your app, and then there's a link to download that app. You have a customized link for each person's newsletter, so you see who is bringing the most traffic to you at the moment. So there are quite a couple of ways that you can. Sometimes when you want to work with a platform, what I always advise is, so for example, you want to work with She Leads, a platform like She Leads Africa, what I advise is reach out to them, tell them what you want to achieve. There might be other opportunities that you don't know of that they can leverage. They can customize something for you, for example, you know, and which will deliver better results for you. So I would say that look at who are the people who can influence that tech space, and it's not that fintech space, and don't look at it just from fintech. Look at people from who are into financial content. Look at people who are into business content. Look for people who are into tech as well. So it gives you a wide range or pool of influencers to pick from. Look at platforms who are empowering platforms, depending on what the app does. For example, if it's an app that helps you to do budgeting, who are the kind of people that would like to do budgeting? Look for people who influence those people, and then you use them, right? And find a unique way to use them such that you can measure the app downloads.
Um,
Yeah.
Abiola Iwola is asking, is there an influencer hub to hire influencers?
I am sure there is. Um, None comes to mind at the moment. I know that I've received a couple of proposals of people who have like I know of Indie Hash. They were going to set up in Nigeria, and I don't know if they eventually did set up. Let me just get the right spelling and drop it. Um, I'll drop it in the chat. Yes, in the hash. It is in the hash. And yes, in the hash. So I know they were trying to recruit influencers in Nigeria. I don't know if they eventually were able to do it, but you have those type platforms where you can shortlist the influencers you want. You can actually brief the influencers through the platform. They will share the content with you through the platform for approval. You can give feedback and then eventually approve. Um, so I'm sure there are contents like there are platforms like that. I don't know how much they've been uptake they have, but you can do some research. I'm sure you'll find the ones that work for your. Alternatively, you have people who represent um, a group of influencers. I know Esto Props, for example, used to Esto Props used to represent a couple of influencers back in the day. So that's another like someone who manages an influencer network. So that's another way to find a group of influencers. Yeah.
So let's take the next question. All right, Abraham Adeleke is asking that how would you calculate positive or negative sentiments for a brand?
You would need to have a platform that will measure that for you. That will, so I think Social Bakers does that, if I'm not mistaken. Sprinkler does that, but you need to have a tool that essentially measures ROI, what ROI is. Sorry, that measures sentiments that can show you which is positive, which is negative, and which is neutral. There are platforms like yeah, Meltwater does that, Radally does that. There are a couple of other platforms you can find the one that works for you because um, depending on some are paid, some are expensive. Find the one that works for you. But you need to have like set that up in place before if mentions for positive mentions is what you are is your KPI. You need to set up a platform that can help you calculate. So you have a before and an after. Before the campaign started, you look at what the graph is, how many mentions were positive, how many were negative, how many were neutral, and then once the campaign starts, you start to measure maybe on a daily or weekly basis how the percentages are changing, and hopefully it's in the favor of positive mentions for your brand. So there needs to be a platform to measure that. You can't do that manually.
Okay. The next question is from Madu Ike. Says, how does one become an influencer or influencer? Let me put that.
How does one become an influencer? If I know, I'd be an influencer too. I know. I mean, first things first is if you're no longer sharing the screen. I think first things first is if I from the definition of influencer, you can then decide how you can get how to be an influencer. Definition of an influencer is someone who has the power to impact a specific audience, um, to make certain purchase decisions on a particular topic, product, or service. So first of all, what is your specific audience, what is the topic you want to be known for, and then do you know enough about this topic to be able to influence people, yeah, what's your niche, how do you want to pass your message across, what's your brand tone, do you want to be seen as the funny guy or the serious guy or the friendly guy or the stand-up guy, who do you want to be, and it can just be that you are good at giving relationship advice, like a Proco doctor. It's okay. Yeah, so basically start with asking yourself, why do I want to do this, what do I want to do.
Okay. Do we have any other questions?
Yes, sorry. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Tayo, for a very good session. I just wanted to ask, how do you handle like negative feedback from a particular influencer ad or promotion? So like take for instance, I think like there was a, is it Nivea cream ad that was done in, I think, Ghana or something, that really spiked the whole idea of why, I don't know, I can't remember that particular issue, but how do you handle something like that? And then if you're using if you're in a contract with a particular influencer, and then there's like a negative um impression or a negative issue that is going on that just came up, so do you cancel the contract, or do you like just, I don't know, I just wanted to know how that works.
Okay, so I give two examples. The example you stated really was not influencer marketing. We use the Omomi as a model in an ad, and we do that. We do that sometimes. So basically, use the known face as a model in an ad versus using just a regular person. So in that particular scenario, the issue wasn't about the person in the ad. The issue was about the way the ad was scripted in the first place, and what was done in that particular situation was the ad was pulled down and edited to take out the parts people were complaining about before it was reflected. Of course, we had to do some, uh, put out some statements and all of that to address the issue. So PR had to come in to address the issue at hand, but it really didn't have anything to do with the influencer, with the lady in question. It wasn't about the influencer. Now, the other example I would give, which I think will be more to the question, is the ad we did with Sydney Tucker for our Dio brand. Now, remember the issue, Sydney Tucker had an issue with this whole COVID situation back then, about him lying that he had the symptoms and he wanted to get tested and all of that stuff. Now, we shot this ad in January. We were going to launch it, I think, in March, and then sometime around that March was when this issue came up, and so we then had to ask ourselves, should we drop the ad or not? So we had a chat with Sydney's manager, to basically find out exactly what was going on, and then we had conversations internally to ask ourselves that this can go both ways. We either get dragged that we are supporting Sydney because nobody knows that you have shot it before Sydney decided to get himself entangled, right? Nobody cares. All they see you is, all they see is that you have decided to do this. So what we did is we had a sort of like a holding statement, um, for anyone who calls out the issue that we are supporting Sydney after what he's done. And there were a number of people that did that, but we were actively monitoring the comments to see that if the comments um, about bashing the brand for using Sydney was more to a certain percentage of the general number of comments, then we were going to pull it down, right? So we already had like a PR plan in place to mitigate that issue. So essentially, um, it can go either way when you're using influencer. For we've had a situation whereby we've had to um, put our conversations with an influencer on hold or our contract on hold because the influencer got into baby mama drama. Um, in one of the other countries that I work with, right? So if an influencer gets into an issue, we always have a conversation with that influencer to really understand what is going on um, without what you call it, just pulling out or just taking what we see on the face value as what exactly is going on, because that means that are you just going to keep, as a brand, are you just going to keep jumping from influencer to influencer? Because people will have personal issues. You cannot take control of it. But if you understand the situation, and then you as a brand, you believe that okay, this person is not in the wrong, we will stick by them. Just you need to just have a conversation with your PR team to say this is what is happening. This is our decision to stick with it. Let's have coding messages to just for any questions that may come up. Sometimes it will escalate up a proportion and you just need to put things on hold and re-strategize, right? So you just need to ensure that you have um, what do you call it, a crisis management plan in place, because it can always go wrong. It can always go wrong. And that's why in your research with influencers, or before you pick an influencer, look at things like, are they controversial? Are they had drama in the past? And this is not to say people will not have drama. They will have drama, right? But if you've had drama 5 times in the last 1 year, then no, you are king of drama. I'd rather avoid, right? Especially if I'm a family brand. Some people, you want to use them because they have drama, because case in point, some people from Big Brother house, right, in the last year. So you just need to have a PR plan in place to ensure that whatever issues may arise, you are very well equipped to address those issues.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have another question?
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, Temitayo, for that powerful question. My name is Charles. So, there's this general conception that influencer marketing sits very well at the top of the funnel marketing, which has to do with general brand awareness and engagement. So, I'm kind of trying to understand, based on your past experiences, how effective is influencer marketing when it comes to using it to drive bottom line conversion, such as sales or probably getting apps download and the likes.
Okay, so for for my brand, our key KPIs generally are reach and engagement. So just on a very generic or basic level, it is reach and engagement, which means that when I'm in engaging an influencer, the influencer that we have engaged in the past, those have been the KPIs. It has either been reach or it has been engagement, right? Those have been the things that those are the things that we have been measuring. So, however, we are testing out conversions now, and what we have done is we have gotten voucher codes from Jumia, given to the unique codes for each influencer, given to them in partnership with Jumia to say, tell your followers to use this code to buy the product. And that way we can see that how many people have used this code for this influencer versus that influencer versus that influencer. So first of all, we can see impact of influencer, and we can also see impact of impact per influencer, and see the impact generally on influencer marketing. And the decision to go with codes, for example, also is is not, you don't just decide to go with codes. It's a conversation that has to be had with Jumia, with the e-commerce team. What is the right amount of discounts to be given? What is the average basket size normally from our shoppers? Should it be 1,000 naira versus 1,500 naira? Should it be 20% off instead of 1,000 naira off? That all of those conversations needed to be had. So you don't just say, oh, I want to use a code and that's it. There are other things that need to be factored in. So influencers do work across every part of your funnel. What needs to change from funnel to funnel is the kind of influencers you use. The kind of influencer you use for awareness is very different from the influencer you use to drive brand love, right? Or you use to drive sales. They are very different. So you just need to take that into consideration.
Okay. So in addition to what Taya said, for conversions, you can create specific UTM links. You can
Yeah.
use platforms like Bitly as well. For apps and general downloads, you can use things like apps like, you can use deep links. So your developers will be able to create specific unique deep links for each influencer, and you then just check which how many people downloaded from that particular deep link, or how many people registered from those particular deep links and all of that. So you could also do that.
I
Any other questions? Okay.
Yeah, I think one thing, I think a lot of conversation has been around, specifically influencer marketing on its own, but there's also the uh, speaking to it being a part of a 360 campaign. And I'll give an example. In our Kenyan market, we did influencer market campaign. We did a 360 campaign for a product we were launching, and what we did is that it's a product that comes in three variants. We picked one influencer to represent a particular variant because we have profiled the product and said this is who this is the influencer that will match this product, right? And then what we did is we took them in studio, we created content with them, we also paid them to create content on their own platforms, and then we used them on billboards. So each influencer had one billboard. And by the time we did post-campaign analysis, where we sent out surveys to people who had seen the campaign to sort of get like their feedback, we saw a very, very huge uh, a lot of feedback on the use of the influencers on billboards. First off, the selection of our influencers was diverse in age range, in time of life, and people said, "Oh, that they're impressed by the fact that we use this particular influencer simply because they know us to use influencers that look really people that use really perfect on our billboards, but the brand is a lot more relatable now, which is not what we it is not maybe wasn't a major goal for us, but the essence of using that wide selection is to get people to see themselves as in the light of that influencer, that what, I don't have to be perfect. It can be me on that billboard any day. It doesn't have to be someone who is slim or has this particular body look, right? And so that integration of using the influencers not just on digital but also using them offline, we really did see the effect and the results from even from a sales point of view, for that particular activity. So it's not just about using influencer marketing on its own, but how do you integrate the use of your influencers in the entirety of your campaign? How do you use them across board? Do you take them in studio, create content, and use them to create materials that will be in store? One thing we also did is that with the influencers, part of their deliverables was to come to our on ground activations, right, in malls. And so they told their fans, you know what, if you want to meet me, come and meet me so place. So that also drove traffic to those on ground activations that we did. So there was like an entire loop around the use of influencers, and it wasn't just paid influencer to do a post and that's it, right? So also look at it from a 360 point of view and not just in isolation. How else can you leverage influencers? And to be honest, if you have conversations with some of these influencers, they would really give you ideas on how the best way you can get value from me. Yeah.
So the final question is, they said, seeing brands that run sponsored ads using the organic posts on the influencer pages to drive better reach, which are highly targeted. Do you think this follows best practice?
You can do it, to be honest, and this is simply because people will be more receptive to seeing content from the influencer than from the brand. So, for example, Bevlinaya puts up a post. She put in paid partnership with Nivea. I can see that on my back end and I can promote the post simply because people will see, oh, it's Bevlinaya. They're more receptive to interacting with that post versus once they see the handle is Nivea, it's like moving on swiftly. So I won't say best practice or not. It's going to depend on a case by case basis, but I think it works, especially if you are trying to drive stuff like engagement.
Okay, thank you, Tayo. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. It's been an amazing session. We'll definitely reveal the next masterclass that will be happening to you within the next few weeks. Before we go, if you're not a registered member of DigiClan Africa, you can do that now. I just posted the link in the chat. Then, of course, we'll have a couple of surveys that you can take as well. We're trying to get more information about the industry generally, and would like you to, give us more information about that. Apart from that, we'd like to thank Tayo especially. Tayo, thank you. I mean, we know it wasn't quite convenient, but at least we made it happen eventually. Thanks for joining us. At the end of the day, we hope everybody has learned something new. Please don't forget to share with your friends as well. Then, of course, we'll be sharing the recording later. So if you haven't registered for the masterclass, please do so. That's the only way that you get to, see the recording afterwards. So that being said, thanks for joining us. It's been an amazing session. Do have a nice weekend, everyone, and have a great day. Bye.
Thank you very much, and bye.
Bye.